Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers, and certainly hope you've been enjoying a wonderful Christmas weekend. Later, a Kentucky lawmaker makes a push to get communities ready to give second chances to those trapped in drug addiction. His plan would certify cities or counties whether or not they're ready with the resources to change lives. State Representative Adam Bowling will be with us a little bit later. But first, Kentucky Education Association represents 44,000 members who are involved in what happens in our schools. The pandemic has changed everything as most learning went virtual, but the push to reopen schools is strong, and it appears that most plan to get in-person learning going next month. Teachers and other school personnel have questions and concerns about how it will all go and about vaccines that they'll be offered ahead of some other groups. Pension questions have returned to Frankfort ahead of the legislative session as well. And KEA President Eddie Campbell is joining us here on Kentucky Newsmakers. Mr. Campbell, welcome. Good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, Bill, and happy holidays to everyone.
And to you as well. Thank you. Tell us about the challenges, first of all, as we look back at 2020, that teachers and other school personnel have faced and conquered since schools were closed and they had to so quickly shift over to online or virtual learning.
So I think the biggest challenge has been ensuring that we're delivering a high-quality education through whatever means, and I think that the challenges that we've had in the fall with the disruption of learning in terms of going from in-person to virtual to engaging those students through that digital medium, those are all going to continue. The virus isn't going to go away. I think there's lots of opportunities, though, that we've seen that's come out of this. That our educators have gained new skills, and through new platforms, our students are learning new skills, and this group of educators and students are going to be more tech savvy than any generation, and those skills are going to carry forward as we in this 21st century global economy. The educators have been on the front lines through this whole pandemic. Last March, they literally flipped the system in a weekend and had to learn new ways to engage with their students. But after that happened, our educators reflected on their practice and what went well and what didn't go well. So they spent their entire summer learning new ways to engage students. They reinvented instructional models. They reinvented delivery of services such as meal service to make sure that students had healthy food, making sure that the cleaning and sanitation so that we had healthy buildings when we move back into the fall. Our educators have just gone above and beyond.
When you have talked with teachers and school personnel about the way this has all gone, how often do they talk about just missing seeing the kids in person?
I think that's the one word that comes out of every educator's mouth, or one phrase that comes out every time I talk to one of our members or an educator across Kentucky. They want to be with their kids. They want their kids to be in person. They miss that interaction because it is different delivering instruction in an in-person setting as opposed to a virtual setting. I think there's not an educator in this state that doesn't want to return to normalcy, but they also want to make sure that the health and safety is also a top priority.
Is there also a concern that once school does start back with in-person classes and those doors open and those kids show up, that they will come with some emotional scars from what has been a very tough year, and from socialization that they have lost, and that there might just be a time of adjustment to get everybody used to being back in school again?
We have all, through this COVID-19 pandemic, we've all endured trauma. The educators have endured trauma. Our students have endured trauma. That separation, that social, emotional well-being is going to be a big issue when we come back in person. And our educators know how to care for their students. They know what teaching and learning what good teaching and learning is, and they know how to meet the needs of their students. And they're going to make sure that their students feel safe, that their students feel loved, and that they're in a safe environment. in order to make sure that high quality learning and teaching and learning can occur.
Teachers are moved up on the priority list for vaccines. Are you hearing that most welcome that news and plan to get them, or is it a mixed bag right now as far as teachers being vaccinated?
I think it's sort of a mixed bag. Vaccinations are, especially an emergency vaccination like this, is a very personal decision. I do want to say that we appreciate that Governor Beshear prioritized educators in the first rounds. It shows that the governor understands the importance of public education, not only for the academic needs of our students, but also that social and emotional well-being. But also, our public schools are a major economic driver. Our board had a robust discussion about the vaccine and how people feel. We encourage our members to learn about it, to read about it, to understand what the vaccine, what all the side effects of the vaccine are. And if they have concerns, well, we're encouraging them to consult with their physician to get those questions answered. And they need to make that the best decision for them and for themselves. But I know that if when it becomes available and I can take it, I will be taking the vaccine myself.
Do you have concerns or questions about whether some school districts may attempt to make it mandatory for school personnel?
I know there's a question that's been looming out there. Can this be made mandatory? I know the Department of Ed has released some guidance around if it can be made mandatory to take. I think with the emergency, this vaccine is not this. It's still in its emergency use mode. So I think that's a question that there really needs to be considered by each of our local school boards and our school districts and the leaders there. That this is still in that emergency stage. So offering it and letting the educators make the best decision for themselves.
I do want to ask you about what's coming up in the legislature and some things I know you're watching very closely. But let me ask you this. Since the last time I think we talked, Kentucky has a new education commissioner, and Dr. Jason Glass, whose formative years were spent teaching here in Kentucky before he went off to leadership posts in a couple of other states. What is your initial reaction to his first months on the job?
So I've had many opportunities to meet and talk with Dr. Glass. He's doing a wonderful job. He's jumped into the middle of this in the middle of a pandemic. So it was quite talk about jumping into the deep end of the pool. That's exactly what he's done. But he's been phenomenal and communicating out information, having conversations with leaders in the state, pulling in all the stakeholder groups to get feedback. Especially around school safety, around the COVID-19 pandemic, and getting students back to in-person learning and how we can do that safely and effectively. So I think he's doing a wonderful job, and I just enjoy working with him on a daily basis.
So the 2021 legislative session will begin on January 6th. Here they come back to Frankfort, and the pension issue has returned to the discussion. There's a bill that would move to a hybrid system rather than the full defined benefit for newly hired teachers in the future. Senate President Robert Stiver says the current system is not sustainable unless the state digs deeper into revenue that it uses for all of its programs. Will the KEA oppose a change in the way pensions are done?
So we've been in the conversations with Representative Massey, excuse me, around the issue, and we were happy for the opportunity to advocate for our members and for future educators that are coming into the system. Ultimately, we have to have a system that provides a sustainable, sufficient, and reliable retirement income. Otherwise, we're not going to attract new educators into the system. So we have a long history of advocating for protecting the defined benefit retirement for educators, because educators in the state of Kentucky don't receive retirement. We just received another draft of the proposal we will continue to lift up concerns. We will continue to educate our members so that they know and understand what's in this bill. And we haven't taken a position on it currently, but ultimately that will be the KEA board. That's one of their duties, is taking positions on legislation that comes out during the session. But I do want to point out that even when a bill is, and as you know, when a bill is filed, what it looks like when it's first filed and what it looks like at the end can change dramatically. So we will be watching this very closely throughout the session.
Well, Representative Kevin Bryant recently said that he wishes teachers would stay out of political issues, and of course that is a large part of what the KEA does in terms of advocacy. How did you take that comment?
So, I mean, so educators are experts in teaching and learning, and the educator voice needs to be there here in Frankfort. We need to be there at the table, helping to craft policy decisions, being engaged in the process. You know, that's a part of the foundation of democracy, is having the citizenry engaged in the legislative process. And, you know, it's actually a constitutional obligation that the citizens get to have their say and their voice in the crafting of policy and what goes on that is going to impact the lives of everyone in the Commonwealth. So I truly believe that the educator voice needs to be in all these discussions, because they are the experts when it comes to teaching and learning.
Mr. Campbell, lawmakers will do a budget this year. It is a one-year spending plan. I'm sure you'll be keeping your eyes on that for education issues, right?
Oh, yes. We always keep our eye on the budget. You know, our school districts across the state, especially through this pandemic, have really had some hits. Our economy itself has had a hit, which means revenue is going to be down in the state. So ensuring that we are fully funding our public schools, that we can provide every opportunity and every resource possible so that our students have a high quality education is always priority number one.
Anything else the KEA will be watching for or advocating for in the upcoming legislative session?
You know, you never know what's going to come down the pike when bills are filed, but we will be keeping an eye on all the education legislation that comes through. And as we move through the session, some things will move to the top of the list, and then other things will drop off. So, but we will be keeping a close eye on everything that involves or impacts education in the state of Kentucky.
Less than a minute left. You are serving as president of KEA while on loan from the Knox County school system, where you've taught choir for many years down there.
Yes.
You got to miss that, especially during the holiday season when there are always so many good concerts and events. Oh
yes, I miss the interaction with students. I miss the concerts and working with my colleagues. You know, to bring that joy, especially during this time of the year, of music to students and then to the community. So that's something that's really dear to my heart, and I miss it greatly.
We appreciate you being with us today here on Kentucky Newsmakers, and you know, let's have a good 2021, right?
That's exactly right. Thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you. Stay with us on Kentucky Newsmakers, and we'll be back in just a moment with Representative Adam Bowling. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. So good to have you here. I'm Bill Bryant. The opioid problem continues to harm people in the bluegrass, particularly hard in eastern Kentucky. Some have said this pandemic has actually made the issue worse. A Kentucky lawmaker from Middlesboro is hoping to see some improvements. He's introducing a bill with the hope of doing that. Representative Adam Bowling, Republican of Middlesboro, joining us now. And we appreciate very much you being with us, Representative.
Well, again, Bill, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. We feel this bill is very important for our local communities and for individuals struggling with substance use and addiction. so that there are, local options for them, and that kind of everybody's on the same page in addressing this issue. So,
do you agree that the pandemic may have made things worse, or that it has obscured some of the ongoing opioid crisis that we have out there?
Without question. I was in committee on Tuesday, actually, Health and Family Services. Van Ingram from Office of Drug Control Policy was there. Overdose deaths are already up this year compared to what they were last year. And those numbers that we had were through the end of September. Actually, September was not even complete. So, this problem, people have been cut off from treatment that they were in. Some people started down the road. They're on recovery, they have jobs, all of a sudden those jobs aren't there. That network, those 12-step meetings, or getting into the certain doctor's offices to get what they need, the ability to do that was taken away to some degree. And especially when people are in early recovery, that's vitally important, is to be connected to groups of people in similar situations that they can lean on to get through the process there. So addiction's on the rise. I've talked to all kinds of, recovery advocates and recovery experts, and they all agree it's definitely been on the rise.
So let's talk about your bill. Your proposal is that you would establish what would be called recovery-ready communities. What would that mean? What would they need to do to be considered a community ready to stand up and take on this challenge?
Well, for the communities themselves, and, there's kind of two parts of this. The bill itself establishes an advisory council that's made up of individuals from the business community, from the recovery community, from faith-based organizations, law enforcement community. And that panel will actually come up with the actual standards for what they will need to do to become recovery ready. But the big picture that we've kind of painted in this is that we want communities to have the ability to create a recovery ecosystem within their communities, so that we're not just treating one part of it. There's going to be a prevention aspect to it. There's going to be a treatment aspect for those in active substance use and addiction. And then there's going to be a recovery aspect. So we want communities to have programs in all three of those categories, which will make them recovery ready. We've learned, talking to local governments and talking to other individuals, that some communities have a great option for treatment for those in active addiction, but they have nothing to, after they get out of that 30 days, they have nothing to work towards recovery, long-term recovery, gaining the skills they need to become employable. And some communities will have a lot of programs in the prevention category, but not really in the active treatment category. So
Representative Bowling,
we want to see all three phases.
Would you say that we are putting too many people in jail who need to be in a recovery program as a Commonwealth? Absolutely.
And our counties are overridden with the economic and social cost of this. The court systems are clogged up. The county jails are clogged up. Law enforcement resources are used towards it. And we're having to pay for that, and that's coming at great cost to these counties with local jails. But a lot of these counties, especially in rural areas, they don't have the resources to actively address this issue. So what we hope to do with this legislation, again, this will be housed under the Office of Drug Control Policy. Van Ingram's been a great partner in this. And we want our communities to be able to work with his office to get programs in place, programs that are already proven to work, to get these programs in place so that we have a recovery ecosystem. And hopefully once that's there, we will see the burdens that are on the court systems, that are on the jails, that are on law enforcement. We will see people, those burdens, reside, and more people getting into active treatment.
I know this is both a government and a business issue. I understand the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce is on board in helping you push this kind of effort, because it's very important to them as well to be able to get employers and get employees who have been through a program and are ready to get back to work.
Absolutely. And, we've been fortunate. We started this conversation back in July, and we brought in the Kentucky Chamber, Kentucky League of Cities, KEA, several recovery groups, Addiction Recovery Care, Operation Unite, Volunteers of America, and they all bought in early, and they've been great partners in this. Each of those groups look at it a little bit differently. Some of them focus more on the prevention side, some of them focus more on the treatment side, and then the Chamber obviously is really focused on the recovery aspect, specifically long-term recovery and getting people back into the workforce. Workforce participation in Kentucky is very poor across the board, and we think this is one of the main drivers causing that lack of participation.
I know you're trying to build support for this, but at this point, you feel pretty confident that this will pass in the upcoming session?
I do feel very confident. I've had the chance to speak with my colleagues on both in the House and the Senate. Was actually communicating with Leader Thayer about it earlier today, and we've a lot of people are ready to co-sign. They're ready to sign on. They see the need for it. They've had their mayors and their county judge executives reach out to them because this has been talked about in KEA meetings and KLC meetings, and our local governments are excited about it. So I think we have a lot of support for it. People see the need for it. So I have a good feeling that we'll be able to get this done.
Before I let you go, just a couple of other things. The Republican priorities have pretty much been put out there for this legislative session as passing a state budget, which of course needs to be done. There was a one-year spending plan for last year, and restraining the governor's emergency powers. Do you agree with those priorities? I
do. I do agree with those priorities. How that comes about, the actual legislation, the wording. I mean, that's a discussion that is ongoing. It's been ongoing, but we just feel completely left out of the conversation. And we hear from our constituents. We're closest to our constituents. We hear from them daily. We hear from them weekly. And, conversations should have taken place between the governor's office and the legislature. We just don't feel like those have adequately taken place. So, we're not going to try to do it to be punitive towards the governor. But, I think in the future, if we have this same issue out there, we feel it's important that the legislature, as a co-equal branch of government, has the opportunity that if we go into a 9, 10, 12-month state of emergency like this, that we have the opportunity to participate in the conversation.
Representative, would you say that if the Republicans in the legislature do take some ownership of the emergency response going forward, that it would differ greatly from what the governor has done? I mean, would there still be mask mandates, for instance?
Well, we actually filed a bill and put it through. It did not get signed into law, but it was at the very end of last session, which was going to give a lot of authority over the boards that govern the different licenses in Kentucky. And we thought that was a way to get buy-in across the board for these boards and these organizations to come together. Whether it's the Cosmetic Board or, the Horse Racing Commission or whoever it might be, to say, hey, this is where we are. This is the plan that we think we can come up with, that we can still operate safely. But, that bill got vetoed, did not make it through. And so I feel like, there needs to be more conversations. There needs to be more buy-in. The governor still needs to have emergency powers to address things that are immediate, like natural disasters or or other instances. We're not going to try to take that away from him. We are a part-time legislature, and it's important that our executive branch has the authority when we're not in session to run the state. But at the same time, this is a unique situation, and it's something that we want to prevent in the future.
Representative Adam Bowling, Republican of Middlesboro, thank you very much for sharing with us about the Recovery Ready Communities bill that you have filed, and talking with us about some other issues as well.
Thank you, Bill, and Merry Christmas to you.
And the same. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year. And stay with us on WKYT. We'll be back on Kentucky Newsmakers. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. Before we go, we have some word about next week's program, and we will have Peter Baniak with the Lexington Herald-Leader, who runs the operation down there. He'll talk about how his team has covered 2020 and also about the state of journalism and the future of the Lexington Herald-Leader. And then State Auditor Mike Harmon is looking into the unemployment obligations now facing the state, and Auditor Harmon will be a guest as well. We hope to see you bright and early for WKYT this morning for our mid-morning program, 10 to 11 on WKYT, and for WKYT News at noon in the week ahead. Thank you for joining us, and have a good week.